She is in fact employed by Grinnell College. Rachel Fly is going to tell us about her career and how she sees the future.
All right, and I split the difference between the two. I'm class of 93, so I'm halfway between, essentially. So I just want to start by saying thank you for having me in the class. And it's fun to chat with students. I get to do that somewhat in the role that I play on campus, but not as much as I would like. And my talk is kind of a mix of actual information about my career and just kind of general things I wish I had known, kind of things, or things I've learned. So if there's anything of particular interest that I don't give you enough information on, just please feel free to ask or stop by my office. So I don't know if this is still the case as much at Grinnell. I think it's a little less this way now, but in the Grinnell of the early 90s, there was a very heavy emphasis on going out and changing the world, saving the world. And there were a few students who went into the business world, but not a lot, and if you did, you didn't talk about it. It was kind of, oh no, you have to go out and do amazing things. So for those of us who are a little unsure about our path, this was especially scary because there was a lot of pressure to do good and we didn't know exactly what that looked like for us or, or what direction we might want to go. So I knew I perhaps wanted to work for a nonprofit. I wanted at some point to head to DC. I was a poli-sci major, so my ultimate goal was to get to DC eventually. But I had some things I had to take care of at home. In the short term, my dad was ill, and so in the short term, I needed to stay close to Iowa for a few years to help take care of him. So I ended up staying actually here in Grinnell for the first 2 years after I graduated. And those 2 years gave me the entry into the world of higher ed administration that I probably never would have had I not had to make that choice at this time. It was not a career path I had thought seriously about at any point in my Grinnell education. But while I was a student, I'd actually worked in the financial aid office as a student worker there. And when I graduated, they offered me a full-time job. So I was like, okay, it gives me something to do, and I need to stay a little close to Iowa. So this was not the path I thought I would take, but it worked for my situation, and I ended up learning a lot about this world. So when it was time to move on, I decided that maybe now it was time for me to go change the world and save the world. So I headed out to DC, got a job at a national nonprofit, learned how to lead lobbying efforts to make sure that our child care programs were funded and supported. Let me note that this job was not purely good luck. It was something I was passionate about, it was fun, but it came because the executive director of the organization was a Grinnell alum. The person I heard about the job from was the spouse of one of my best friends at Grinnell. And my first roommate out in DC was a Grinnell roommate that I had a summer that I spent here in Grinnell. So the Grinnell connections were everywhere in that world of figuring out what I wanted to do. Yasmina, who was my executive director at this job, taught me so much about lobbying, about grassroots action. That's what we did out in our organization. And about ways that causes with very little money could make a big impact in a place where lots of people wanted lots of things. DC was amazing. I loved living there. I learned a ton, but it was also crazy expensive. And unlike Yusuf, I did not pay my loans off in a year. I went into debt living in DC. And that was a choice, but it was not a sustainable choice. So it was something I did for the experience and for the love of what I was doing, but I knew it wasn't something I could do for the long term, at least in that way. So as great as my life was, and as much as I loved DC and loved what I was doing, I decided to go back to grad school, because that's what you do. So that's what I went to next. So I always wanted to be one of those people that had that one thing that they were crazy passionate about, knew exactly what they wanted to do, and just went out there and did it. But I'm not. It took me a long time to get comfortable with that, to really recognize that it's okay not to have that one thing, that it's okay to be passionate about a whole bunch of things, and take a while to figure out what you want to do and make changes in that path. So for grad school, I had wanted to do public policy. but I wanted to do it with a social work lens. So I wanted to have this sort of slightly different lens to it. And it turned out that none of the programs that I found that I thought were going to meet that need were exactly what I wanted. And they didn't really meet the needs that I wanted to get out of it. So I actually discovered a master's in public administration, which was not at all the direction that I had thought I would go. But it really combined my love of policy with my love of the practicality of politics and government and actually getting things done, which is something that has sort of run for me throughout everything I have done. So it ended up being the perfect blend and the perfect fit for me. It also pushed me in some different directions as I learned about, again, more career paths that I never knew about or never would have thought about here at Grinnell. I left my grad program, finished it up, thinking I would go and be a city administrator. That was my new career path. I was going to go, I was going to run a city, I was going to have a great time, we were going to have an awesome place to live. And then I got a call from Grinnell College. And they had a position in the alumni relations office that they thought I might be interested in applying for. Because I had worked here, I had met some people, made some connections. So I decided that sounded kind of interesting, so I applied for the job, and I got it. And it was a blast. That was the best job ever. And I worked for alumni relations. I planned reunions. I traveled all over the country doing alumni events for Grinnell alums everywhere. I traveled overseas and did programs where we volunteered in countries around the world. I met alumni, got to hear their stories from the classes of the 30s all the way to the 90s and the aughts, and I learned how to ask for money, which was another one of those skills I never thought I would have or want to do. And that truly probably was the best job I've ever had in my career. But, and for those of you who are extroverts, who like connecting with people, who like to travel, I highly recommend looking into things like admission, alumni relations, things like that. It's not a job you necessarily think about when you're in college, but they can be, those jobs are a ton of fun, and you can do and learn some really great things. Things change in your life, and you need to look at new things. So I was a little out of balance in my work and my life, and I realized that I needed to change that a little bit. I've always been a little bit of a workaholic, and so I love my jobs. I have fun doing them, so it's easy to get really into it. But sometimes you have to rethink your priorities. And so I was ready to have a family, and a job where I was traveling 2 and 3 weeks out of every month did not mesh very well with that. And so I knew kind of that wasn't going to work in the longer term. So that's where conference operations and events, which is what I do now, came into the picture. And it was great because alumni relations really solidified for me my interest in working in higher education and what that actually did and what you could do here and all these careers I knew nothing about. But conference ops let me do similar things, but on campus and learning some new skills that I hadn't done in that. So it kind of opened some new doors for me there and allowed for a little more balance in my world. And that balance also allowed me to pursue some other interests that were not necessarily work-related. I, like Robert mentioned in his presentation, needed to have a little balance with the work and non-work and find some things that I was passionate about that weren't necessarily tied to my job. So I was showing my slides to my coworkers yesterday, kind of helping me prepare, and I showed them this slide, and they started laughing out loud. And they said, "Rachel, you don't never say no to new opportunities. You never say no to anything." Like, you don't even know the word no. So I have to own it and laugh at myself a little bit about that. I'm not a good person for saying no to much of anything. But I guess my point for this is that sometimes you get some really, really great opportunities in ways you totally don't expect, and in ways that that may seem a little crazy. at the time. So I was working in conference ops and had, my life was a little more in balance, but I was ready for some new challenges. And I got approached to run for the city council here in Grinnell. And so one of the council members had to move away. They were looking for someone to run for that spot. And so I was like, oh, I never really thought about running for office, never really thought about doing something like that, but decided to jump in and give it a chance. And I got elected, and I'm now serving on my 3rd term on the Grinnell City Council, which has, again, been one of these things. Who knew I would learn so much about sewer pipes and wastewater treatment plants and all kinds of crazy things? But it's fascinating stuff, and the skills that one needs in the sense of a city council and in serving constituents and in being able to answer questions and learn how all these things interrelate have been invaluable in all parts of my world. So while I was on the city council, I then got approached actually to run for state representative. So in 2012, I threw my hat in the ring for that and decided to try that out. So I used some of my fundraising skills, my people skills in meeting people, doing door knocking, 10,000 plus doors, and knowledge and having to learn and have really specific knowledge about a lot of positions, a lot of things about agriculture, the environment, just amazing breadth of things that you have that people are going to ask you about when you knocked on their doors, and you need to have some sense of how you felt about it. So that was a really, really incredible opportunity. It was hard, and it was painful sometimes, and it was a lot of work and a lot of time away, but it was so much constant learning that it was absolutely incredible. I ended up losing the race by just a few percentage points, which really sucked. But that was also a learning opportunity. But it was that was like a turnaround in my world for just how to really push yourself to do something you never thought you could do. I've done the same thing with some state boards that I've been asked to be on, local boards, things like that. Those are the things that it's amazing what you can learn and the leadership opportunities you can be given and you can explore just by not saying no to some of the crazy things you might get asked to do or some of the crazy things you might see out there. And they all play into that leadership that you'll need to then have, to go into your career and things like that. I will note, because one of my loves is politics, clearly, that for those of you who will be in the job market soon, that there are a ton of political jobs that will be available soon and happening right now as we have the 8 million Democratic candidates that are now in the race, and they're all coming to Iowa. And I've been meeting with the different candidate representatives, and they're all going to be hiring in the next few months because all of the political campaigns are going to be ramping up in Iowa. And so if any of you are seniors and looking for a job and wanting to just do something fun and completely different and really hard but really amazing for a short period of time, political campaigns are a ton of fun. So I will just say that's super fun. So I did this as sort of the career path. I envisioned my path as slightly more of a straight line, which it was not. And I'm glad of that. Now that I look back a little bit, I'm glad that it wasn't a straight line. But I think about the things I've learned doing the different things. And in conference operations, what I do now, I've learned how to manage a database, to write policies, to book concerts, to work with famous speakers, to plan huge events, and to run a guest house. And none of these things, when I was at Grinnell or when I was graduating, were on the list of things I thought I would ever do. These were all just kind of things that ended up happening in my career, but were not ever sort of in the plan. But through these, I've also learned other things. So through my concert booking world, I've learned to become an advocate for the arts. And so I've learned how to advocate in different ways for not only the arts, but for other things, but I've become a passionate advocate for the arts. I've met and worked with presidential candidates in every election cycle and got to meet all kinds of amazing people. I've helped craft and execute a minors on campus policy that has been really important for Grinnell to have. And I make sure, one of the things my office does is make sure that commencement is carried out flawlessly for our students and our families. So all of these things make a difference in the world of our campus and have helped me come to grips with that sort of making a difference in the world thing, that sometimes you can do that not only in the big world, but also in the world that you're in. So this slide has a little bit of a story. I took this picture of this alligator. And so a few years ago, I was feeling restless and a little too comfortable in my world. And it didn't feel very good. I was not in a good place. So I decided to take a little time away and think a little bit about what I needed to do differently to make my world more satisfying. So I took a month off and I rented a condo in Galveston, Texas, and I did a personal retreat. And I did some thought work, I did some writing, I did some other things. But what was really important to me is I really wanted to think about the things I needed to change to make my world feel more satisfying. So while I was in Galveston, one of the things I challenged myself to was take some adventures that would take myself out of my comfort zone. So one day I went to the state park that was known for its alligators. And I decided this would get me out of my comfort zone. So I brought my bike, and I got on my bike, and I started going down the road that took me to the trails. And the first thing I see is this big sign that says, "Beware of the poisonous snakes." And I was like, wait a minute, they said alligators, nobody said anything about poisonous snakes. So now I'm at a higher level of terror on my bike. And I head down into the trails. And so I just start riding, and I wasn't really sure exactly what to expect about this. But I take the first turn into the trail, and holy cow, there are alligators everywhere. like, they are next to the trail, they're over the trail, they're in the water, they are everywhere. And there are little signs that say, don't get too close to them, and don't touch them. But it was terrifying. So I'm trying to stay not so far off the trail, but not step on an alligator, or not bike on an alligator. And it was one of the craziest experiences I have ever had. But it was amazing. And my heart was beating and I was shaking. But I also was realizing that this is what had been missing in my life. That I had been so far in my comfort zone that I had missed that feeling of what it meant to be out of my comfort zone. And so I came out of that day and out of that ride, and frankly out of that whole month, with a realization that I needed to make some changes to mix up my world a little bit and spend a little more time feeling uncomfortable and a little more time pushing the envelope and not knowing what was next and learning new things that I hadn't maybe been stoking my need to continually learn enough. So so that was a huge experience, my friend the alligator. So that trip led to a process of reevaluation and reflection for me. It was part of that, but then led to a bigger process of that. And what's kind of come out of that for me in that was about 2.5 years ago, was that I want a new career path. I want to make a right turn or a left turn or some kind of turn, but that I need to figure out what that looks like. And it's okay to do something different and to make that turn. So I've decided that I'd like to look into the field of emergency management. So I've taken dozens of FEMA classes. I have gotten a master's certificate in disaster preparedness. I have looked into some volunteer opportunities to go get some actual real life experience in disaster management. I'm really looking at what I need to do to be able to make that eventual switch into that path. I also realized again that desire to do something that's uncomfortable is really important, and to push that envelope for me is something that keeps me excited and motivated. And so I took a job as an adjunct professor at the local community college, and I'm teaching an American government class. So teaching is not my thing. That is not something I ever thought I would do, but that was something that they had a need, and it was something that would really push the envelope for me to have to figure out how to do. So I said yes. And so I found out that I adore my students. We have a good time. It is hard work every single time, and I struggle every day to come up with the things I need to do. But it has like pushed me in ways I never thought I would be pushed. And then I also, about the same time, decided to try triathlons. So I have a friend who wanted to do something new, so we decided to start doing triathlons. We do the sprint triathlons, which are the short ones. But I started biking and running and learning how to swim again. And after we did the first couple, we kind of got hooked, and now we're decided to do one in every state. So we're 17 states in. We have 8 more planned for this year, and then we've got a few more years to do them. But it has totally reminded me of how much I love the travel and the getting away and the energy that goes into the preparation of something and a little bit of the competition. I suck at it. I mean, I don't have to be good. I never win anything. I'm dead last most times. But it's just the fun of it and the prepping of it and the constant excitement about it and the travel. So all of those things kind of came out of this process of reevaluation and rethinking what I needed in my world to be satisfied. This is the DC Metro because I love DC. But this just is a reminder to use your connections, to learn new things, to get what you want to go. And I just want to echo something that Robert said about Grinnellians and how willing and excited they are to help you and how many amazing Grinnellians there are out there doing all kinds of things that totally will do anything for Grinnellians, for other Grinnellians. And so I want you to feel that and know that. And I'm here, this is my home. I'm in my office is in the JRC. Because I was in alumni relations and I've been here for a long time, I know a lot of alums. And I know that lots of alums doing a lot of different things. So you are welcome anytime to stop by my office and just say, hey, do you know anybody who does this? Or I'm interested in going here, do you know anybody who lives there? And if I don't, I'll get on ECN, which is the Facebook alumni group, which is amazing. And as soon as you graduate, you should join. And there are literally, 5,000 or 6,000?
A third of all the alums in the world are on it. It's over 6,000, 6,500 people.
Yeah, and if I don't know somebody on ECN knows somebody. And we'll get on there and I'll put a little message out and say, I got a student in my office and here's what they need, who's gonna help them? And there will be 1,000 responses. So it's an amazing community. And I know you have the CLS, and please use that. I'm not saying to use this instead of that. But it's a great way, and alums really do want to help you and want to be part of your world. So the last piece is just my little personal reminder to take care of yourself. And to don't get lost in your desire to do it all and be it all. But remember to take care of you and to nurture your own needs and your own self as you figure out what you want to do in the world of work. So that's it.
I think we may have neglected to welcome Rachel to the class.
It's all good.
All right, let's give her another round of applause.